When Star Wars came back in 1999, it made money, but it also made enemies. For all of the criticisms of Episode 1, stilted dialogue, poor acting, Jar Jar, George Lucas took steps, well half of one, to rectify these issues, while at the same time just getting a little bit carried away with the brave new world of digital filmmaking.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. In the 3 years since Phantom Menace had been released, it had been regarded by some as absolutely the very worst thing to happen to humanity in that time frame. Once you discounted terrorism, poverty, recessions, and Smallville. A lot of noise and fury had resulted from the Phantom Menace not being what the fans wanted. George Lucas was not completely oblivious to this outcry. Well, not entirely. Lucasfilm had taken note of the less than suboptimal acceptance of certain elements of storytelling in Episode 1, and when Lucas set to work on Episode 2, he would eventually take on a co-writer to try and punch up the dialogue.
You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams.
Somewhere along the line, this film became derided as the absolute worst Star Wars film, a title it shares with 6 other absolute worst Star Wars films, which are also absolutely, objectively, the very worst film ever.
How rude.
While I don't consider Episode 2 great, I kind of enjoy it as a solid action-adventure film. To date, it's the most we've seen of the actual Republic in its heyday outside of the Senate and the Jedi Temple. Having said that, there's certainly much that's a bit ploppy. But it's fun plop. Who doesn't like a bit of fun plop? Quite a few people, as it happens. They are really staunchly anti-plop. In our review of Star Wars Episode 1, we talked about George Lucas's long-held desire to improve the tools available to filmmakers through digital technology, computer-generated imagery, non-linear editing, as well as better presentation technology, which was all somewhat ironic as Lucas was a man who wrote his scripts longhand with a pad and pencil. By 2002, only a few low-budget films shot on video had been shown theatrically, but after a false start with The Phantom Menace, George Lucas was ready to take the next step to an all-digital production. The thing about making a film all digitally is that it's great, but it wasn't always great, merely a good idea. But in order for it to ever be great, you have to work out the kinks. Being a pioneer is hard. Just ask the Donner Party. Shooting a picture on film is a photochemical process. You expose film to light, you develop the film to end up with a negative, you make a positive work print from the negative, you physically cut the film and stick shots back together in a different order with tape or glue.
Hang on, wait, the tape won't stick. The tape won't stick.
When you needed to combine images, you used an optical printer, which of course would degrade the image the further you got away from the original film negative.
Don't keep going, we'll get out of sync.
If you had computer-generated effects, you'd have to scan them back onto film and cut that back into the movie. When you were done, you got somebody really, really trustworthy to physically cut actual negative and edit that before you made a positive print.
Hey, it's me.
But before that, just to see what you had filmed, you'd have to wait until the film was developed and a print made to watch at dailies.
Who's gonna make them?
I don't know. Someone.
You?
Of course not me.
But someone.
Even having a video assist system, basically a video camera attached to the viewfinder of the film camera, it wasn't quite the same as just watching back your actual footage, as you could do with videotape. In short, while film is beautiful to watch, actually working with film is like using a cactus for a chair, a complete pain in the arse. Lucas would swap that arseache and replace it with one that involved fixed resolutions, a lack of digital projectors in theatres, and the very real threat that somebody might accidentally wipe a day's work by taping over it with the Super Bowl halftime show. Also, are we sure that's not actually what happened? On Episode 2, George Lucas wrote outlines and first drafts so the pre-production could commence, but more finalised drafts of the script came much later than usual. Lucas got a little help with the script from writer Jonathan Hales, and it's marginally, like 3%, less stilted and clunky than before. It's a slight improvement, but on par with having 3 speeding tickets quashed when you still have to face trial on bank robbery charges.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating. And it gets everywhere.
Small improvements at least got rid of some of the more amateurish dialogue from the first film, but it didn't really help the acting performances that remained as poor as Tesla quality control. I think that was the steering yoke falling off.
That was some shortcut, Anakin. He went completely the other way. Once again, you've proved... If you'll excuse me... I hate it when he does that.
Episode 2 starts 10 years later with Amidala having gone from being a queen to a senator. There are fears that she may be targeted for assassination, but that's possibly completely overblown.
There was no danger at all.
Okay, look, there's a perfectly rational explanation for that. Termites. Jedi Master Obi Wan Kenombi and his now grown-up Padawan learner Anakin Skywalker are sent to protect the senator.
Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
Anakin tries very hard to hide his Force boner by being mindful of things like baseball, but he's clearly in love with Padme. The more we get to know the 19 to 20-year-old Anakin, we see he's got some resentments bubbling away, and he feels like he is being Force cock-blocked by Obi-Wan.
In some ways. A lot of ways. I'm really ahead of him.
People keep trying to kill Padme, and so Anakin escorts her back to Naboo, where she will be safe from bumbling assassins, but at the same time will have to spend time with someone the Jedi had already once rejected after seeing a cloudy future for him. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan goes on a mission to track down the assassin's employer and ends up on the planet Camino, perhaps named by car fanatic George Lucas as an homage to the Chevrolet El Camino. Obi-Wan finds out that a dead Jedi Master had apparently ordered a massive clone army from the Camino Clone Masters, all based on the bounty hunter Jango Fett. Did he put down a deposit or leave a very large check post-dated 10 or 20 years? It's at this point you need to start taking notes, because names are thrown at you with reckless abandon.
Master Cypher Diaz.
A man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan.
A bounty hunter called Jango Fett.
It's like the first few chapters of a book by Tolkien, but with only half as many oh-so-convenient rescues. Meanwhile, Anakin and Padme had been making eyes at each other, though Padme resists Anakin's best pickup lines, like somebody wearing a Kevlar flak jacket to a paintball match. After their date night goes nowhere, mainly because Padme spent half the evening changing outfits, Anakin has a fevered dream, and due to the fact people have very dirty minds, the staging of this would forever colour the movie. Whatever cred this movie had over The Phantom Menace is immediately lost in a wave of titters. The result of this sticky dream is an early morning trip to the laundry, and Anakin saying that he's compelled to go back to Tatooine after 10 years because his mother is in danger. There's nothing remotely Freudian in dreaming of your mother in a fever dream. Nope. On Tatooine, Anakin finds Watto has flipped his mother to Jack Thompson's Clee Galars, who freed her and then married her. What? Thompson, a great Australian actor, brings his best Clayton's American accent to the role. It is the American accent you have when you don't have a convincing American accent. Unfortunately, Shmi has also recently been kidnapped by the Tusken Raiders. Anakin finds her at their encampment, where she dies in his arms. Then he kills all of the Sand People, and as the memes would later tell us, all the women and children too.
I killed them.
Padme, rather than reject Anakin as a mass-murdering monster, is still attracted to his dark and smouldering bad boy personality. He's deep and complex. Yeah, this will end well.
I hate them!
But, you know, she knows with a little hard work, she can change him. Meanwhile, they all end up on Geonosis, perhaps named by car fanatic Lucas after the Ford Geonosis. There, Count Dooku explains the plot. Sorta.
Hundreds of senators are now under the influence of a Sith Lord called Darth Sidious.
Christopher Lee manages to make a reasonably memorable Star Wars villain, even though he's technically Sidious's apprentice. Like Darth Maul, he's basically another placeholder villain until Lucas gets around to the last film.
Kill him.
Of course, with Dooku telling only half the truth, the overall plot is sort of coming together at the same time as falling apart. It's like the band Fleetwood Mac during the recording of the album, well actually it's all of them, isn't it? By now we're starting to see what Palpatine's end game is. He sets up the Separatists to attack the foundations of the Republic and get support for the Republic to give him extra powers and raise an army to attack the Separatists he let loose.
Clear your mind must be if you are to discover the real villains behind this plot.
It sort of makes sense, but it's a really, really long-winded and overcomplicated way of doing something simple. Like how Auntie Beryl uses Yahoo search to find Bing.com so she can find the web address for Google so she can find the link to read her Yahoo email.
I truly, deeply love you.
Anakin, Padme and Obi Wan manage to do well enough in an arena battle against large creatures, but then the battle droids show up and everything's looking grim. Then the Jedi show up to save them.
This party's over.
But soon that too is looking grim.
Look!
And then Yoda shows up with the clone army. I assume Yoda put them on his card since a check would have taken a few days to clear. Dooku escapes and is confronted by Anakin and Obi-Wan. Things don't go so well when Obi-Wan is owned and Anakin finds he'll still be able to play the piano where he likes to play the songs of the band Wings, but will now only be able to play Linda McCartney's bits. Back at Coruscant, perhaps named by car fanatic George Lucas after the Toyota Coruscant, it looks to the Jedi like their victory was won in name only.
Begun. The Clone War has.
Meanwhile, Anakin and Padme marry in secret.
How can this be?
John Williams brought us a solid score, giving us rousing and romantic music to accompany another film with great sound design. So, not to harp on,
Way too late.
but while the movie is full of exciting, if really over-the-top action sequences, the prequels insist on having R2-D2 and C-3PO involved in everything, despite hardly anyone else ever speaking to them. C-3PO, having been built by Anakin then abandoned, is now with the Lars, who have finished the job and given him a skin, but who Anakin just takes for some reason without even asking. That's probably the reason they bugger off from Tatooine without even saying goodbye.
Stop thief!
Part of me really hates the scenes with C-3PO in the factory and his little dad jokes once his head and body are welded together with battle droid parts.
Die, Jedi gods!
But also the actual dad jokes here make me laugh for their sheer ridiculousness.
I'm quite beside myself.
It's like laughing at dashcam compilation videos. I know I shouldn't, I just can't help myself.
Where do you think you're going, mate?
Star Wars plots tend to work best when they are fairly simple. I wouldn't call the plot here complex, but it's such a ridiculously convoluted way to set up a number of huge battles. Metaphorically, you might think your complex plot is like playing Jenga against a cat representing your audience, where you think your creativity will be able to outsmart the cat, but realistically, the cat will just get pissed off. Again, we can see how a generally quite talented cast, well, in other movies, often come across as flat and dull. Ewan McGregor and Christopher Lee seem to be able to work with George Lucas's famously detached way of directing actors. Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen during their romantic scenes seem to have the same amount of expression as their Star Wars action figures. I mean, they're mint in original packaging, but still. It does seem like you could have just used the action figures and saved the cash.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
And this is my home. I know it very well. That is why we're here.
Attack of the Clones was the first Star Wars movie to be filmed in Australia at Sydney's then new Fox Studios. The cream of acting talent from Australia and New Zealand, well, the ones not on Home and Away at the time, appear in a number of incredibly minor walk-on roles. Rose Byrne is one of Padme's assistants, Joel Edgerton is Owen Lars, Luke's future uncle, Jay Langer as Captain Typho, Temuera Morrison plays Jango Fett and Daniel Logan as his son Boba.
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.
Morrison would later go on to play Boba Fett in later Star Wars TV projects.
You wanna buy some death sticks?
The technology on Padme's ship is amazing. She can control every function from this one button. The communicator, the scanner, turn signals, the rear wiper. She can change the channel on the radio from Tatooine Rock to Mos Eisley Talk Radio, and, well, whatever else you need, just in case you forgot to shoot Natalie Portman pressing any other button. The film becomes an animated movie once everyone's on for Geonosis. The use of virtual sets and CG characters in the last third of the film is an amazing technical achievement, but it's also the culmination of the film's vices. The amount of computer-generated imagery is a major step up. It's done well for 2002. The problem is there's just way too much of it to completely lose yourself in what's going on. It's always obvious as to what was CG and what was real. Ewan McGregor is real.
Good job.
Natalie Portman is real, we think.
I shouldn't have done that.
Yoda is CG.
Terrible pain.
Jango Fett is real. Mace Windu is real. All of the battle droids and super battle droids and creatures are CG. Hayden Christensen is possibly clockwork and needed winding up. And Christopher Lee looks like he's finally made up his mind about changing agents after all of these years.
I wish she were still alive.
Episode 2 is probably the Star Wars film that feels most like a video game, with sequences like the Droid Factory seeming like they'd be a natural fit in a Super Nintendo game. Super Attack of the Clones might have even been fun.
That's why I'm here.
Attack of the Clones is also the most adventure-y and overall fun film of the prequel trilogy. The storyline of Anakin turning to the dark side doesn't overwhelm the plot like it would in Episode 3, but there is some young adult level romantic drama bullshit where all that's missing is a pop rock ballad by Aerosmith, or failing that, Journey, or in a pinch Michael Bolton.
I hate them!
However, we do finally get to see Obi Wan being a hero in his own right.
That's good news.
Ewan McGregor would find working with all the effects to be tedious, but he still managed to give a good performance.
What is your suggestion, Master Jedi?
Oh, Anakin's not a Jedi yet. He's still a Padawan learner. But I was thinking...
Hold on a minute.
Excuse me.
Episode 2 is stifled, however, by the performances of many of the cast.
I don't like sand.
In other videos, we've talked about George Lucas's propensity for rushing through scenes without offering actors much direction in order to elicit a performance. And again, you can tell which cast members work well with Lucas's approach and who really needed the director to help.
Well, then they should be made to.
Also annoying is the fact that all of the clone troopers are computer generated, and while technically they are fine for the time, there is no substitute for an actor in a costume. Unless of course that actor is Steven Seagal, in which case, CG away.
Next time, try not to lose it.
Yes, Master.
This weapon is your life.
I try, Master.
Why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me?
Still, if you want the tech to progress, someone has to make that leap of faith. The thing about leaps of faith is, statistically, you're still going to end up with more broken legs than is absolutely ideal, particularly when Harrison Ford is nowhere to be seen. The film has a lot of fun action moments. I mean, who doesn't love Yoda pulling out his lightsaber, which was possibly one of the biggest cheers I can recall hearing in a cinema. It's just a shame that the human interaction wasn't given enough attention. The action is fun, but it's too unreal to be taken seriously. Like a scam caller wanting me to pay my tax bill with Apple gift cards. I tried part paying with Google Play cards, but they didn't want to deal with that whole green bubble shit.
He never listens. He doesn't understand.
That pioneering effort to make a big-budget film digitally did help accelerate the move to digital filmmaking, but it came with a cost. With celluloid, you can rescan the film at whatever resolution you want, so as display technology and formats improve, you can in theory unlock more and more of the image that was captured on film originally at whatever resolution you want. Attack of the Clones was recorded on Sony video cameras with anamorphic Panavision lenses and finished as a native 2K project, meaning if you wanted to go higher than that, you would need to upscale, which is about as ideal as trying to break a crab shell with a hydraulic press. You can do it, but the waiter will charge you for pressage. If a newer high-resolution format came along, the older movies finished on film could be rescanned at a higher native resolution, while Attack of the Clones and its sequel would look roughly the same. In theory, you can rescan the original negative of Blues Brothers 2000 at, let's say, 64K resolution at some point in the future and unlock even more disappointment. Attack of the Clones would always be a fixed disappointment. It should be noted that many movies at the time of this video in 2022 are still finished at a 2K resolution and upscaled for higher resolution formats. Even so, principal photography is often filmed at a higher resolution than the final product, because the extra definition there does help a little. Just as when the original trilogy was made, some effect sequences were shot with VistaVision cameras for the extra definition, to mitigate against quality loss. Of course, at the time of Attack of the Clones filming, higher resolution digital cameras ready for film production just weren't available. That's life on the bleeding edge of technology. Some things hyped as being on the bleeding edge just end up as a sad footnote in history.
This is such a drag.
Something that's also a sad footnote, Jar Jar Binks was in the movie, but only in a few small scenes. After Padme delegated her role in the Senate to Jar Jar Binks, yes, Jar Jar Binks, he is subtly manipulated into supporting Palpatine's first grab for power. So, Jar Jar ruined the first movie, and now he's ruining the entire galaxy. Episode 2 was the first Star Wars film that was not the top box office earner of the year it was released. While it was still very successful, Clones came in third behind Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers and Spider-Man. Fortunately, superhero films' dominance of theatres would prove to be a short-lived fad lasting only several decades.
I like 2 or 3, but I'm not really sure about one of them.
One funny thing about Attack of the Clones was how, at the time of its release, it was seen as a small improvement on The Phantom Menace, but in hindsight has somehow become worse. Potato. Even a film where the critical consensus is that it's poor has its ardent defenders.
This is a mistake, a terrible mistake. They've gone too far. This is madness.
Attack of the Clones is less of a kids' movie than Phantom Menace. It's still got its fair share of things that just don't quite come off.
The worse it gets.
Personally, I don't hate Attack of the Clones, and in general, I usually enjoy watching it more than Phantom Menace. It's got fun action alongside amazingly stilted acting. But then it's always nice to be reminded of Thunderbirds.
The shroud of the dark side has fallen.
Next up though, Lucas would try to tie together 5 existing Star Wars films with a neat bow in Revenge of the Sith.
Hello there.
Also, it would be really good if somebody would show George Lucas how to tie a bow. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below or check out some of our other videos.
Son, let this be a lesson to you about how to get ahead in life.